Welcome into the PFF NFL Daily. Today discussing Robert Quinn getting traded from the Chicago Bears to the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a fourth round pick with the Bears picking up most of Robert Quinn's money. Sam, it's one of those deals. It had been rumored for a while. Robert Quinn, one of those pass rushers who was thought to be available, contending teams in the mix. The Bears, look, I know they're coming off a great win against the Patriots, but we know they're in rebuilding mode, that they need to accumulate draft capital. I think it makes sense from their perspective. And then for the Eagles, never been shy about having too many pass rushers, so they add another to the mix to one of the best defensive lines in football.
Yeah, I'm surprised the move took this long to happen. I mean, we were talking about it heading into the season, that Robert Quinn is the kind of player that Chicago should be looking to ship, given what they'd already done and the sort of tear down of any piece of value on that roster that they did heading into the year. Like, it made sense to move him off then. All they've done by hanging on is give him 7 games of like below average play. It feels like they're selling low, and yet a fourth round pick is actually a pretty good return for a 32, almost 33-year-old edge rusher who's got like zero production this season. I guess, you hear about trades and people will make the point that you're always trading for the contract as well as the player. And the fact that Chicago is willing to eat that money and make this a much more palatable deal probably helps explain the compensation. Like, they may be selling low in terms of the production that Robert Quinn has had this season, but they're able to claw back by being willing to eat a lot of that money.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to, be like the wet blanket of reason, as I've heard people say, as everybody's complimenting this pick or this trade. That, yeah, Robert Quinn, he had 18 and a half official NFL sacks last year, was a very good pass rusher, had an 80 pass rush grade, just about his best number in a few years. This year hasn't been anything close, but I do think as a rotational pass rusher for the Eagles, by the way, he's got a well below average run defense grade, right? So he's always kind of been this explosive pass rush, like one-dimensional type, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think he'll be more productive in Philadelphia. But it's also fair to ask the question. He's got his lowest win rate since 2012, lowest pass rush grade since right around that time as well. I mean, he's not playing well right now. Or is this just a 7-game sample? Or has he lost it? Or are the Eagles going to get the most out of him because he's edge 4 for them rather than the top guy that, for the Bears?
And that's why it's so strange. Like, if they'd sold coming off the bank of last year and, an 80 PFF grade, almost 50 pressures, the 18 sacks, the kind of thing that the NFL probably still values more than they should, relative to every other piece of knowledge you have, that would be a great sell high opportunity for a guy like Quinn. But they didn't. They held on. And right now he's got 14 pressures. He's got a 57 pass rush grade and 14 and 1 sack. Like, it's a real kind of sell low opportunity. He hasn't done an awful lot for Chicago at all, but I do think that you put him on that Eagles defensive line and you get a different player, not just because he's edge 4 and they've got a bunch of other players to take attention away from him, but also because they can afford to use him in a very one-dimensional way. Like, Robert Quinn has always, throughout his NFL career, dominated with that speed rush around the edge, the kind of wide 9 alignment, get around, run the corner and get pressure that way. He's never really had a great inside move or a great bull rush. He's won consistently around the edge. When he had that one crazy year back in, 2013?
Yeah.
That's some of the best individual speed rush reps you will ever see from a defensive end. He was just bombing around the tackle in 2 seconds, like, consistently all season long. It's an absolutely incredible year. He's always won that way, even if it hasn't been as consistently or as often as that season. And I think the Eagles can set him up to just win that way, right? They can deploy their defensive line. They can run the kind of combination of 4-5 rushers in a way that he can do that every single play and will not be taken out of the game. I think that's the difference between him in Chicago this year and him in Philadelphia.
Picture it, Sam, your kicker's lining up for an onside kick. The chances of regaining possession are slim. The stakes are high. Tension's higher. Pulse is racing. He kicks, and you watch the ball as it pops up into the air. You can make every play. Feel this exciting with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and their unbeatable offers. Right now, new customers can make a $5 NFL bet and get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Check it out. In addition to the usual bets, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. And to make things even sweeter, you can throw down on those stepped up same game parlays once per game day all season long. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF to get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Just place a $5 bet on any football game only at DraftKings Sportsbook using the code PFF. Popped up and in the air. Just waiting for it. Just to, explain who they have right now. Hassan Reddick has been a fantastic offseason addition for the Eagles. Josh Sweat, those are your top two guys as far as edge rushers go. And then Brandon Graham, who's still sitting here with a PFF grade of 90. And so those are your three edge rushers. You throw Robert Quinn into that mix, and Quinn doesn't necessarily, like you said, have to be an every down guy. He could be a pass rush specialist. He could be an outside speed rush specialist while these other guys are doing their work. Plus, you have Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams. There's depth. Javon Hargrave in there. There's a lot of depth on this defensive line. I'm always intrigued by the 30-plus-year-old defensive lineman playing 25 or 30 snaps a game rather than trying to make him play 50 or 60, and I think that might be a perfect fit for Quinn.
Absolutely. I mean, the Eagles, when they had their best defensive line, their best pass rush, their best defense, that Super Bowl run, they were leading the league in pressure rate. And they were doing it not because they had one absolute superstar that was going to rack up like 100 pressures in the year. It was because they had 7 guys that could all generate pressure. And maybe they wouldn't all do it at once. Maybe they wouldn't all do it consistently. But 7 guys were all capable of causing you problems. And that makes them a difficult thing to match up with, particularly when you can rotate them and keep them fresh. That's what they're looking at again this year. And maybe those guys are not as good as they were back then. Fletcher Cox certainly isn't the same player that he was at the peak of his powers. Brandon Graham actually weirdly appears to be back to that level, but maybe tails off given his age, 34 at this point. They have that group again. They've been able to assemble the depth that makes them so incredibly difficult. Like that, other teams get it done with one superstar, knowing that you're going to be able to get pressure consistently with one guy. The Eagles are going to bring and rotate through this group and force you to try and figure out which guy is going to win in every given play. And I think Robert Quinn is a good addition to that.
Yeah, because you mentioned, we both mentioned Brandon Graham and how he's, playing well and rushing the passer at a high level and has 85 pass rush grade, 90 overall. But he's playing 20 to 30 snaps a game, right? He has not played more than 33 snaps per game, which makes a lot of sense because he's closing in. He's 34 years old. It's his age 34 season. I just think that's smart team building. They also, by the way, they lose Derek Barnett earlier in the year. So they thought they were going to have another edge defender. Barnett had been a good solid player over the last couple of years, and he would give them 40 to 50 snaps a game. But I think the Eagles are just being smart, kind of pivoting the snaps to Josh Sweat. It kind of Sweat's time to break out. I mentioned Hassan Reddick, who they bring in. So the younger players are collecting more of the snaps, and Robert Quinn and Brandon Graham are going to be in that 25 to 30 snap range and just be able to produce for that amount of time. Our PFF grades, I think, through the years, like Ndamukong Suh is one of those guys that always came to mind where he would play 800, 900 snaps a year, and the total grade wasn't always that great. I was always curious what would happen if he only played 500 snaps or 400 snaps. He'd probably be more productive on a per snap basis. And I think the Eagles are tapping into that ability in their mid-30s-year-old players here.
And they've also got a couple of young guys who've been getting snaps on the edge this year and haven't really done anything, like Patrick Johnson, Teron Jackson. These are guys that have combined for just under 100 snaps as a duo, and they've got, 4 pressures. Like neither of them has got good pass rushing grades. They've got 4 pressures total. If Robert Quinn gets 100 snaps, if Robert Quinn has whatever that is, like 60 pass rushing opportunities, how many pressures does he get? It's probably significantly more than that. So I think they're looking at that and saying, look, we gave these young guys some opportunity here because of an injury to Derek Barnett or whatever. It hasn't had production yet. So let's see if we can upgrade there.
From a Bears perspective, I think you made a good point, was that, maybe they could have traded Quinn in the offseason. We knew that they were rebuilding and that they were going to be cleaning house, but they have to continue down that path, add more draft picks, add more depth. We get to see more from Travis Gibson, who's had some flashes this year, and Dominic Robinson, the late round rookie, had a really good week 1, has tapered off a little bit, but the Bears are in that mode where it's my favorite line. Yeah, who's part of the rebuild, right? Who are the young players that they're going to build around? Makes sense to move on from Quinn, get something for him, and let the kids play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at this point, there's just no upside to keeping Robert Quinn given where the Bears are going right now.
So another great move, I think, for the Eagles, adding some depth, and the Bears continue their rebuild. It's the PFF NFL Daily.